Okay, it's time for a car video. This is a poem that I wrote many years ago and I lost it. And my friend just called me recently and she said, I have this poem that you wrote. And I was just so stoked because I really liked it. I'm going to call it a prosum because it's kind of prose and it's kind of a poem. But it's about how planting a seed in your mind, whether for better or for worse, in this case it's for worse, what happens when you do that. So this poem is called The Thought. In the end, how it started was somewhat unsure, but at first it caused a certain indignation. It was just a passing thought, really, a lark, what someone else would do, what she would say if she were someone else in an alternate life. A vile, weak thought, and she brushed it away with a disgusted grimace because it was beneath her and her resolve was strong. And it would never have returned. In fact, it would have been dead, except she revived it, once briefly, in a moment of weakness, just for spite, just for a moment, just to make herself feel better, like a morose joke. The next time, maybe the third or maybe the fourth time, it happened to complement her self-pity so perfectly that she could not bear to eject it instantly, but instead she considered it, only sarcastically, of course. She tried it on like an evening gown and slowly turned it around in her mind. How it would feel to say such a thing, how it would sting. But like an actress, she rehearsed how she might say it, and thus perfected the lines. But then she scowled at herself and flung the thought angrily away. She should have obliterated it, burned it. She should have made a firm resolve to reject any trace of it in the future. She should have carefully laid the consequences before herself to discredit and expose her self-deception. But she wasn't entirely ready to obliterate it, it having become somewhat of a habit. And so she flung it to the shady outer resources of her mind, but not far enough. There it waited, a germ, ever so quietly advancing like a cat of prey, carefully positioning itself, scouting, sniffing, grim and dark. It waited. It waited with endless patience for another passage to her heart, because hers was a strong heart and had long been set. For all she knew, her occasional forays into fancy were harmless musings, though admittedly they seemed to occur more frequently of late, more than she liked. Still, it was pleasant in a sick way to act without really acting, and her heart was still resolved to win, to weather this test as she had so many others. But the germ was not benign, the cat was hungry, the dress was fitted, the lines were rehearsed, the thought had become familiar. One day, quite unexpectedly, she opened her mouth, when out of the recesses, out of the hiding place, sprang the evil, the dark, the grim and wretched thought, as if it were alive, as if she would ever think it, as if it were her own. In astonishment, she assured herself that it was merely rhetorical, not really her, like a bad dream that seemed real but wasn't. But secretly and privately, she was astonished at the great and fearsome strength her thought had gained, merely by leaping off her tongue and passing her ears which had never before heard the thought, but were now exposed to its horrors by her own mouth. Somehow it had become independent, alive, prophetic. Now it loomed and threatened. Suddenly her heart felt so weak, and she wondered, can I withstand this? How can I win? Surely this is my greatest battle. And her hope, long neglected in favor of the delicious rehearsals, reeled under the grim germ which had become pervasive, omnipresent. For the first time in her mind, there were two established sides. The thought, which was once brushed away in disgust, now vaunted itself arrogantly against the good, which once was sure of its hostess, but now rang itself nervously. And rightly so, for the landslide was in progress, having begun much earlier with dust and pebbles so tiny. The footings of her resolve had shifted, sliding away downhill under the constant stamping and rumbling of the pompous thought, which began to fill her every breath. Breathe in, breathe out. For now it is a life and death struggle. Moment to moment, will the terrible thought become action, fusing itself into the soul? Who can say? Of course, it is true. She did have many chances to win, to cast out the thought and live a free, unfettered life. But the first chance was by far the best, to brush it away and leave it behind. Alas, she picked it back up one too many times for such an easy end. Okay, that's my poem, The Thought. I hope you liked it. I hope you're never in that position. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. There's no thought that is worth holding on to besides him. And that's it. That's in Jesus' name. Bye.